Today we're talking about my lead vocal effects chain, and we'll get to it all after this introduction. Welcome everybody, I'm Dan Spencer, and I am the Audio Sorcerer. So this is the channel where I teach you how to perfect your audio recording, mixing, and mastering skills. So before we get to the video, make sure you guys smash that like button. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when new videos coming out. So in today's video, as mentioned, we are talking about my lead vocal effects chain. And this effects chain is made up of 4 plugins. And we're going to go over these 4 plugins in detail in this video. And make sure you stick around to the end where I'm going to give you one bonus tip that is something that you may or may not want to add to your lead vocal effects plugin chain. And I'm also going to let you hear what the vocals sound like with all of these plugins added at the end. Now, before we get to all of that, definitely check out audiosorcerer.com, because on this website here, I offer a bunch of different services from mixing and mastering, from editing to training. There's something there for everyone, but there's also a blog on there full of great articles that will give you mixing and mastering tips that I don't tell you about on my YouTube channel. So definitely look into subscribing to that because these tips are all free. So now that that is out of the way, let's actually get further into today's topic, and let's look at our first plugin, which is the Waves Doubler 2. The first plugin in my lead vocal effects plugin chain is the Waves Doubler 2. So this plugin is extremely easy to set. You literally just open it up and you turn off the direct button right here where my mouse is at, and that's it. You leave all the other settings exactly how they are. So the idea of this plugin is to add a little bit of thickness to the lead vocal and to make it a little bit wider. So you want to make sure that it is subtle because you don't want the vocal to sound chorusy. So I'm going to let you hear how I have it set. So we're going to start with it bypass and then I'll bring it in. So let's give it a listen.
And she's such a thrill. I thought this couldn't be real. I only want to see face in the morning. And so take me down tonight. And we just might forget this life.
All right, so there you have it. You could hear the vocal sounds a little bit thicker and definitely a little bit more wider. So for this particular song, I wanted it to be a little bit more obvious, but for other songs and other genres, I might pull it back just a little bit. So that is the Waves Doubler 2. Let's move on to the second plugin in my chain, which would be a plate reverb. And in this situation, I'm using the Waves CLA Echosphere. The second plugin in my lead vocal effects plugin chain is a plate reverb. And I don't necessarily like to specify which plate reverb I'm using because this changes from time to time. However, I'm currently on a CLA Echosphere kick. Now you could also use CLA Epic, which is a more pimped out version of this reverb here. However, Epic has, I think, way too many parameters, settings, and features in it that are way over the top for just a simple plate reverb for lead vocals. Epic is great for background vocals, vocal throws, and effects in general, but for what we're doing here for lead vocals, Echosphere is a much better choice. So, to set plate reverb on lead vocals using the Echosphere, we need to first turn off the slap delay because this comes with slap delay built in. So just hit the mute button right here where my mouse is at on the slap delay. And then the first thing we want to do for the plate reverb is we want to set the pre-delay here, okay? So this song is a BPM of 155. So the way we find our different like eighth notes, quarter notes, 16th notes is we take 60,000 and then we're going to divide it by the BPM of the song. So I'm going to divide this by 155. And then 387 is obviously too high for a pre-delay, so we're going to do divided by 2 here. 193 is still too high. So the highest pre-delay we would want for a vocal track is probably about 166, I would say. We don't want to go any higher than that. So we're going to divide it by 2 again. All right, so we get down to 96. So obviously you could see this is where I chose here, 96, okay? I'm not quite sure where 96 is. That's either the 16th note of the song or the 8th note. I think it's the 16th note, actually, of the song. So this is allowing us to keep the pre-delay in rhythm of the song, and that helps the vocal to sound a little bit better. So what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that the reverb doesn't kick in until 96 milliseconds after the vocal actually sings. So it's going to make the vocal sound just a little bit clearer, okay? We're going to hear the reverb 96 milliseconds after the vocal sings, all right? And then the reverb time, I don't recommend necessarily doing this to the tempo of the song because, you know, it gets a little too tedious at that point, trying to really just dial into that. And it really doesn't make that much of a difference. So this here, I just recommend using your ear. Now, the actual sound of this reverb, this plate reverb, is really just tied to this plugin here. This plugin has a sound, and I just love the sound of it, okay? So that's all you really need to do to set the Echosphere plate reverb here. The only other thing, and this is optional, is if you want to enable a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter. So for this particular vocal track here, I enabled the high-pass filter here, and I did it up to 99 Hertz. And that was it, okay? So let's give it a listen here. I'll start with a bypass and then I'll bring it in.
And she's such a thrill. I thought this couldn't be real. I only want to see face in the morning. And so take me down tonight. And we just might forget this life.
All right, so as you can hear, the vocal sings and then the reverb comes in a split second after, and that allows for the words to be clear and not drenched in reverb. And of course, you'll get to hear this in the mix later and hear how it sounds cohesively. All right, so let's move on to the third plugin in our chain, which is the Slate Digital Repeater Stereo Delay. The third plugin that I use in my lead vocal effects chain is the Repeater by Slate Digital, which is actually made by the D16 Group, if you didn't know that. And what I like to do is choose the CLA-ish 8th delay preset. And this preset is not set up for your particular project. You do have to make some modifications to it. So first you need to decide whether you're going to use a quarter note or eighth note delay. Those are the two delay types that I recommend timing-wise for a lead vocal. Now, I chose a quarter note, which is 387 here, and we're going to set that on the left side. Now, remember, we can use the technique I showed you in the prior plugin to find this. It does have a sync in here, so you can kind of use that in here to find that also, but use the calculator technique. It works well. So you're going to set your quarter note on the left side, and then you're going to add 10 milliseconds to that for the right side. And it's that simple. Now, the only other adjustment you need to make is you need to dial in the feedback, and these should be synced for left and right because I think the preset usually has it too high, and I usually have to dial it back. Now, I do want to mention I can't take credit for this. This is a CLA technique, so giving credit to him for this. All right, so let's start with the bypass, and then I'll bring it in. So let's give it a listen.
And she's such a thrill. I thought this couldn't be real. I only want to see face in the morning. And so take me down tonight. And we just might forget this life.
All right, so there you have it. It's definitely very spacey and it's actually quite loud, and that's because this mix is very thick and it is eating up the sides and it is eating up the delay. So I had to have it pretty cranked for it to cut through in the mix. So, you know, for other songs, I might have it pulled back. It all depends on your mix. You just definitely have to use your ears and dial it in properly. All right, so let's move on to our last and final plugin in my lead vocal plugin chain, which is the Avid Real Tape Delay. The fourth and final plugin in my lead vocal effects chain is the Avid Real Tape Delay. Now this plugin, to my knowledge, is exclusive to Pro Tools users. However, you can use a plugin in your collection that could do a slap delay, because we're using this for a mono slap delay. So you're going to want to create a mono aux track. So as you can see over here, all the way to my right, this slap delay track here is mono, as you can tell by the pan knob right here. And we're just gonna keep it right up in the center. So all you need to do for this plugin here, what I like to do is I like to make the machine US, because that is one of the options we could change here. We could do Swiss, Lo-Fi, or US. So I like to change it to US because I think the default is Swiss. And for delay, I like to change it to 166 for milliseconds because I believe that is the actual Abbey Road delay. So that's what I like to set it to. And again, we just keep it right up the center. All right, so let's start with the bypassed and then I will bring it in. Let's give it a listen.
And she's such a thrill. I thought this couldn't be real. I only want to see face in the morning. And so take me down tonight. And we just might forget this life.
All right, so this one is definitely meant to be used very subtly in pretty much every situation, okay? We just want to give a little bit of extra 3D-ness to the vocal. So as promised, I'm going to give you one bonus tip for your lead vocal plugin chain, and we'll get to it right now. All right, so your bonus tip for your lead vocal effects chain is to add a room reverb to your vocals and the one that you're using across all of your instruments. Now, the key to doing this is, and this is a good tip for all of your instruments, is to make sure that you're using some sort of a subgrouping in your mix. So, for example, for my drums, I have a drum verb. For my bass, I have a bass verb. For my music as a whole, I have something called music verb. And then lastly, for my vox, I have vox room verb. This is an exact replica on all of these auxes of this reverb here. They're exactly set the same. And the reason I do it this way is so I can send each of these, let me close this here. I could send the drum verb to the drum mix. I could send the bass verb to the bass mix. I can send the music verb to the music mix. And then lastly, the vox verb to the vox mix. And those are all right here. So what this means is that at the end, I have these subgroups of all the actual instruments and the reverbs going to one place, okay? So that's how you want to set up your routing in your sessions, okay? And just going back to the actual room reverb and why you might want to add this, this is just putting all of your instruments into the same space. You don't want to add a lot of it, you just want to add a very small amount. And it may not be right for every song for the vocals, you know, just you got to kind of play it by ear, but it's a good way to make things sound cohesive. So with that being said, let's actually let you hear what the vocals sound like with all of these effects on them in the mix. Let's give it a listen.
Smile bright, baby, come on. And she's such a thrill. I thought this couldn't be real. I only want to see face in the morning. So take me down tonight. And we just might forget this life. And she seems to shine from the inside. And smile bright.
All right, so there you have it. That is my lead vocal effects chain. And you can, take this a little further if you want. You can add some EQ to these plugins. You could add a high pass, a low pass filter. You could add them to your heart's content. But 9 out of 10 times, these plugins are going to work perfectly the way that I showed you. And, depending on the genre, depending on the song type, you could, remove a plugin or two of these. It all depends. The one that I typically remove is the slap delay. So that would be the real tape delay that I'm using in there. So I don't typically want that on a ballad because I don't really want that to be heard, okay? So that's the first one to go. The rest of them, they're usually in most of my songs. We don't always want a heavy delay also on a slow song, so I might get rid of the stereo delay, the repeater. So that's just some tips for you there. But the doubler and the plate reverb is pretty much on every vocal track that I mix, okay? So if you guys ended up liking this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe so I'm making this content for you, and hit that notification bell to know when I have new videos coming out. And if you guys enjoyed this video, definitely check out my review/tutorial on the CLA Echosphere. And with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later, and peace out.